Good evening. Yeah, thank you for having me here. My name is Taka. I just came from Ethiopia and I'm a student in Peking University. I'm doing my PhD. So before I came here, I was in a government. I was a state minister and I had a big position. I had a big power actually before a student. So I just want to share you my experience, how I decided finally to become a student in Peking University, just leaving my position. So my speech will be decision making between two important options. This faces everyone, When you have two important options, what will be your decision? It is challenging. If you have a bad option and a good option, definitely everyone chooses the good one, yeah? But if you have two good options, what will be your decision, Especially when you are at the age of 50, what is the best choice? Stay in power or study? To become a student or to be a government official? What will be your decision? This was a big challenge for me. So my final decision was just to continue my study in Peking University. To reach this decision, my leadership and professional experience helped me, because I have been through many experiences in my leadership time. So I have learned a lot, how to make a decision. So I just want to share you some of the points that helped me to reach this final decision. So the first one is inspiration and motivation is very essential. You need to have some inspiration for your decision. You need to have some motivation. So to study in Peking University in China, the first motivation was I was here in China many times. I've been here in China more than 10 times. But at that time, I was using, the VIP route, the diplomatic route, not the normal route, at that time. When I become a student in Peking University, I have to use, not the VIP route. I have to use the normal route. But when I came to China every time, the development I saw, the progress, the economic growth, the well-being of the people, it attracts me, I just want to know more about this development. How do these Chinese people make this kind of development within a short period of time? I need to know the detail of this growth and the development. That was my inspiration, So it makes me to decide to learn in China. The motivation factor that I got when I came to China, in one of the workshops I have got a chance to discuss with Professor Justelin, who is the professor in Peking University, is my professor now. So when we discussed with him, he just tried to brief the development path, the urbanization, the modernization path of China. I was so inspired. I was so motivated. So when I got a chance for study in Peking University, most of you, just want everybody in China, not only in China, and Asia and other African countries wants to study in Peking University. That's a motivation factor also. This is a prestige university and one of the top universities in the world also. So these are the inspiration and the motivational factor that pushed me to decide to study in Peking. The second element is think about the long-term consequences of your decision. Sometimes people just want a quick solution, a quick decision. But you need to know the long-term effect, the long-term consequence. What will be my decision after 5 years, after 10 years? One of the professors in Harvard University, Edward Banfield, has said the most successful people are intensely feature-oriented. They don't need a quick solution. They are a feature-oriented people. So, and I always use, the Warren Buffett, who is, most of are familiar with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is one of the shareholders of BYD. So he has some decision-making methods, models. He used 10, 10, 10. So how will you feel your decision after 10 days, after 10 months, after 10 years? You have to imagine what will be the consequence of my decision after 10 days. What will be after 10 months, after 10 years? So I tried to calculate, what will be the benefit, the results, the outcomes after 10 days. After 10 days, I will be in comfortable zone. I have a big office in my country. I have good chairs, I have a good car from the government. I have so many benefits. That's for 10 days, 10 months. That could not be continued for 10 years. So you have to make yourself, think what will be my decision after 10 years? What will be the result? Which one is way out, So this is the second element that I used to make my decision. The third one is do more with less. When we confuse to make a decision, we try to research more, The more we research it, sometimes the more negative thing we get, from people, When I try to ask what will be the study in China, what is the environment, what is the food, the culture, some people may say, negative things for me. So you should not do much research, Once you have a passion, you follow your passion. As I told you, I have the inspiration, the motivation, so that's my passion. I want to study in China because I want to know more about this development. So if I try to research more, I might get some negative things, so can't change my decision. So don't do much research on your decision. Follow your passion. That's my third point. The fourth point is think outside the box. Don't think the current position you have. Think outside the box, Just challenge the status quo. Challenge your position. Find the best path forward. Find the best path for the future. Money, power, fame, may not last long, but skill and knowledge will be your own. The knowledge I get, the skill I have is always with me, but the position cannot last long, I may have a position for the time being, but I may lose that position. We don't know. You may have a power, you may be a popular or fame. That comes from your customer. That comes from other person, not from yourself. Knowledge, skill comes from yourself. You may have some popular people, celebrities. They have so many fans, But if they did some mistake, everybody will not be their fan, Because that fun, that popularity comes from other persons, not from themselves, If you have many followers, you will be famous. But if you lose that follower, you are not more famous. So the knowledge, the skill you have is always with you. Wherever you go, you have the skill, you have the knowledge. It will go with you. So see opportunity that may otherwise be overlooked. Don't try to see single things. Don't try to look your position, your status quo. Try to search other things, outside your thinking. There are so many opportunities outside. So this is the fourth one. The fifth one is identify the parts of yourself that want different things. As human beings, we always need some sort of things, different things, We don't like to be always in a routine work, We need some new things. So what's that new thing? You have to identify that thing. So in my case, I try to think, how can I improve my work? I was working in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So how can I satisfy, the customers, the investors? Especially there are so many Chinese investors in our country. So what is the service in China? How can I satisfy them? What kind of service are they looking for? What kind of service are they get from China? What kind of service we have to provide? I have to know that. That's a new thing. I just want to know, to serve my customers. So this is one of the important things that just give me, power to decide to study. And what assistance and support from government do investors need? How do the government of China provide service to customers, to investors? So this is a new thing that I want to know from the Chinese experience, from the Chinese lesson. That's a new thing that inspired me to know more. So finally, take a breath. After you assess everything, I just take a breath, understand the effect of decision fatigue, and avoid my ego. Cut down on the number of reasons you have to make decision. I just try to cut down. We just try to put some reasons, to reverse our decisions sometimes. This reason, this. Try to avoid these reasons. Try to minimize your reason. Stay away from the what if game. What if I couldn't make the PhD study, This is a killer phrase. What if I couldn't make that? You have to believe on yourself. I can't make it. You have to say, I can't make it. If you put what if, that's a killer word. You will not reach to your final decision. So these are the 6 points that I want to share today. Thank you.